This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
I started shaking and I was like, okay, keep yourself calm. Keep yourself calm. This is my mother I'm talking about here, which made me even more scared because, personal responsibility really just isn't her thing, and I love her and I don't want to say anything bad about her, but she really makes some really poor judgment decisions. And I was nervous, even more nervous when I thought about that, and I thought, how can I not be my dad?
Imagine spitting into a tube, sending off your DNA, and unknowingly turning your life upside down. For me and thousands of others, this is our reality. I'm your host, Alexis Auerselt. In July of 2021, I discovered that I am an NPE, someone who has experienced a non-paternal event. In other words, my biological father isn't who I thought he was. This podcast shares the journeys of people who were shocked by a DNA discovery, mostly through modern DNA testing. We're telling the stories of NPEs, adoptees, and donor-conceived people and their families. This is DNA Surprises. Oftentimes in the DNA Surprise community, one NPE leads to another. In this week's episode, Scarlett shares how she learned she was an NPE, only to learn that the man her mother identified wasn't her biological father either. She tells us about her tumultuous upbringing, how her relationship with her raised family and newfound family is progressing, and how she tackled processing her DNA surprise. I spoke with Scarlett in July of last year, just a short time after her discovery in March. Stay tuned for an update from Scarlett at the end of the episode. Thank you for sharing your story, Scarlett.
Hi, my name is Scarlett. I am 45 years old and I'm from California. Well, I feel like I'm still pretty new at this. I discovered my DNA surprise in March of 2022. So I'm a brand new baby MPE and still trying to navigate all of that. I think it's probably best to start from the beginning of my childhood because it sort of matters and how everything sort of plays out in my story. I grew up, my parents were very young, just barely out of high school. Maybe even still in high school when I was conceived, and they were sort of encouraged to get married because of their Catholic faith, which I'm sure is a common story. From then, it became very apparent that it was a dysfunctional relationship. My mother is a fiery personality, and she can do no wrong, and everything bad that happens is because of some other person's doing and never her decisions that create situations for herself. So it was a very tumultuous relationship. It was a very dysfunctional relationship. Drugs, alcohol, yelling, screaming, broken things, punching glass, fighting in the middle of the night, pulling us out of bed, bringing us to strangers' houses while it's in the middle of the night. It was just very traumatic. Moving, hiding, the whole thing. And when my parents finally divorced, I was 9 years old and I was feeling a bit of relief because the back and forth was over. And I hate to say I'm glad my parents divorced, but for us and for me, I thought it was the best thing because it was no more back and forth. We can build our lives from here. I'm okay with this. He's just down the street. So let's just do this. And we were court ordered then to go to my father's house every other weekend. And at that point, We went there every other weekend. My mom and my dad did have a younger brother. So he is my dad and my mom's full child. So my brother and I would go there every other weekend. They just lived their lives and we just happened to be there. So we just counted down the minutes and days. There was no cell phone. Finally, they got us like a Sega game. And I was so grateful for that because it was like living in a museum and we weren't allowed to touch anything. And we were the dirty children who came every other weekend. And it was very painful and lonely. And when I got old enough then to have friends over, I took full advantage of that. And when I was able to drive, I was grateful as all could be. I just did my own thing. I was able to work, be busy, and just show up there at night because I was court-ordered to be there every other weekend. And, it was better when I got older. Meanwhile, my stepmother and my dad had a stepson and daughter who were older than me. So they were sort of teenagers and doing their own thing. We were not close at all. They did their own thing. I didn't see them very often. And it was fine, whatever. Yeah. But boy, was I the step kid. I was definitely outside of the circle. I did not belong in there at all, but I kind of attributed that to my stepness, if you will. Yeah. And so it wasn't a huge surprise to me that I sort of was just on the outside and I was just an object sitting in their living room until Sunday afternoon when I could gratefully go home. My mother went through a relationship after relationship, did eventually get remarried to my stepfather, who was very, very abusive. I luckily was only hit a few times, but really it was the screaming and the yelling. It was the standing on your toes, pointing a finger at your nose, touching your nose while screaming profanities at you every single day, about every single thing. And it was hell. I just wanted to run away. It was extremely painful. So I was either ignored in one house or I was abused in another. We moved. I moved schools probably 2 or 3 times every school year up until 6th grade. Wow. Some schools more than once. And sometimes with my grandma, we were just always with people, always moving from place to place until my mother married my stepdad in 6th grade. And that was horrible. They had 2 kids that were 12 and 14, 15 years younger than me. And they were partiers. So they partied. And I was meant to take care of their kids and my brother. And I was, their words, children are to be seen and not heard, and do as I say and not as I do. And so I took care of their kids. I took care of their friends' kids when they dropped them all off, and just groups of kids while everybody partied, came home super drunk. And I just managed that 2:00 feedings with an infant, the whole horrible thing while being just abused. It was horrible. So when I was 15, I went and got myself my first job. And my goal was to get out of this house. I knew my parents loved me and my extended family loved me. They would tell me they loved me. And I knew that they did. It was just, they had their own troubles. And so being really present in the whole parenting process wasn't really a thing. They just had their own troubles. And I'm not saying that because I lived this life that I wasn't loved. I was. And it also made that sort of confusing. If I was loved, why am I being treated like this? So when I was 15, I got a job. And I just loved working, and I got more than one job, and I got really busy working, and I was taking all the money that I earned and I would buy stuff for an apartment. My dream was to have my own apartment with peace and calm and joy, and that's what I wanted so bad. So I secretly hid things in my closet, plates, towels, things for an apartment. I just could not wait until the day. Well, one time I was about 17 and I told them, my stepdad again was just pointing in my nose and just about leaving a dryer door open or something complete while dressing his children for school. I left and I never went back. And I lived with people. Since I worked so much and I worked in places where college people worked, I was still in high school and I moved out and I started paying rent and sharing apartments with people who are older than me. I was only 17. I was still in high school, and I worked and I built a life for myself. And I graduated high school and I went to college, and I bumbled my way through that like no one's business. It was just, I had no idea what I was doing, and just doing really poorly in school. I did the very best that I could do. Found myself in a sorority, which was a really interesting place for me. I learned a lot. I couldn't relate to these lovely young ladies who had a very different life experience than me. So I had a lot of anger. I was like resentful. And it was my fault I didn't get along very well with people because I was an angry person who just couldn't understand their problems when I was like writing checks to live there myself with my own money while their parents took care of everything. So I had a chip on my shoulder. I take full responsibility for that. I just sort of bumbled around and was like, this is not the place for me. But I learned a lot. There were a lot of really wonderful people there. I just couldn't reach them at the time, because of the place I was in at the moment. So continued to work and figure out school. And I met my now husband. We moved on. I graduated with my master's degree and my undergraduate degree in San Francisco. We moved away, and it was the best decision I had ever made. I learned so much about myself. We ended up breaking up for a year or two, and I just found myself. I traveled the world and I did things that I did not ever think were going to be a part of my reality. And I started just creating this person about who I wanted to be and what I wanted to be. And we ended up getting back together again, and we got married and we moved back home. And that is a part I struggle with a little bit because the proximity to some of the dysfunction was a little bit much. I created boundaries the best that I could. The household was very dysfunctional. I mean, not mine. I had a lot to learn about how to parent, and to be close by was a little bit of a challenge.
So you were close to your mother again and your father?
Proximity.
Yes. And not emotionally, but physically, yes.
So, and again, I knew they loved me, and I had this obligation. I'm not sure where it came from, but this obligation to honor your parents, honor your elders, and I allowed them to become grandparents. My father and my stepmother loved and relished being grandparents and just doted on the kids. And I just took it and said, great. I'm glad. I'll do that. I'm okay with that. My mother has a hard time relating to kids. She doesn't relate to kids very well and did her best. She loves our kids, but our kids are like, Grandma doesn't really know us very well. Like, she just doesn't get us, Yeah. And I'm like, well, she's doing her best. She loves you, and that's all that she's got to give you. And so we're just going to accept that and love her back. And figured out how to parent, how to love my kids deeply, how to immerse myself in their lives and be a part of their daily journey and enjoy and have joy and peace and confidence that every day was going to be a safe place for them. And it was just the most peaceful part of my life. And my kids were involved in many activities, and we were not only there, but we were the parent club president and the this and the that and the fundraising chair and there with them. My husband's family is normal and loving and supportive in a way that it still boggles my mind. So wonderful group of people that I just couldn't love more than I do. Then my stepmom and my dad divorced. And my father had done some really ugly things in the past. And it was just tumultuous. And throughout the years, whenever they would break up or fight, my dad would call me, tell me all the sordid details. I did not want to know any of that. And I would drop what I was doing in San Francisco, and I would come home and help. And then they'd get back together and we'd do that over and over until finally I was like, they got back together again. And my dad was like, we're back together. Oh my God, we're so happy. And I'm like, wow, this is like the 6th time this year. Is this the right choice for you? Or does this make you happy? And he goes, if you had God in your heart, you would understand. Because now they were super religious. So they got a divorce. Now, finally, this is 20 years later, they get a divorce. And now suddenly my dad needs a kidney, and he's extremely unwell, and his wife has left and found herself a new life. And all of a sudden he's at my door, and I am suddenly responsible for him, for everything. Money, time. Is in the middle of COVID. We were learning how to give him dialysis. My kids were online. My career went from face-to-face treatment to online and teaching 90 students how to do that along with their supervisors and create something from nothing, doing the same things everybody else was doing during COVID. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. He moved in, and my husband and I are fighting now because he's like, what is he doing here? And I'm like, where else is he going to go? We get him his own apartment, and we're paying for stuff, and it's outside of our budget. So meanwhile, we get him into an apartment and we hit a routine. We start going back to school and I start going back to work and I'm moving along. I got my dad an apartment and he's just down the street so I can be his caregiver without being in the home, which was the best thing for us. And my mom was like, you should do this 23andMe. Your brother and your sister and I did it. And we are finding all out about my grandmother. And my grandmother, my mom's mom, was adopted. And we never really knew. And it was interesting because my children are Asian and half Asian and half whatever I am. And I don't even know what I am because my grandmother was adopted. There's not a lot of history. And so my girls were like, what am I? I'm like a smoothie. I don't know. I'm a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm like, well, we know you're 50% Asian. So, but I don't know what I am. And I never had time to do that before. I loved learning all about the history. And when I was able to learn how to drive and drive to my grandparents on my dad's side, I would actually go spend time with them because I didn't see them very often, the divorce and all that. So when I was old enough, I wanted to know, who are you? What did you do? Like, your parents were German and you lived on a farm. Like, I wanted to know everything about my grandparents. But my grandmother on my mom's side didn't know. So my mom was like, hey, since you have more time and you should do this 23andMe. We did it. It was so fun. And we have family going back to the 16th century now. I mean, we didn't know anything about grandma before. And people from all over the world are collaborating on that side of the family. You should try it. And I was like, okay, well, I feel like I can focus on that. My kids are older. They don't need me 24/7. Everything's ironing out. I feel better. I did it and found 23andMe. I found nothing that unusual. I found my sister, my half sister, my half brother. I saw my mom and my grandparents, and it just went all the way through. And I was so fascinated. And then I looked at my genealogical makeup, and I was like, okay, Irish, Scottish, English. That's all my mother. She's like completely only that. And then I was like, my father was half German. I mean, my grandmother's parents came from Germany and did not speak English. And I'm like, I have like 0.2%, something, none.
So you knew there was no question about the German heritage on your father's side.
I easily passed for them. They have very specific features I do not share with them. There's these very specific eyes, nose, and ears. They all have curly hair. I have curly hair, but there's towhead blonde, with a couple of brown-haired people in there. So literally I could totally fit. It wasn't like, I have blue eyes, but they're not the same. And I had a giant unibrow with long brown eyelashes, which was not on that side of the family at all. But I thought my grandmother was a little bit darker complected and had some of that. So I thought, I really didn't think of it before. I thought, I mean, I could pass for either like a mixture. And I have my mother's face. And everybody who sees me says, you look just like your mother. And I'm like, and so I always knew I had my mother's mouth, her face, not her eyes as much, maybe her shape of her eyes, and her curly hair. So I never thought of it, never. I texted my aunt real quick. I said, oh, tell me what dad is again. And she told me 100% German on one side and blah, blah, blah on the other. And I was like, oh, thanks so much. I'm just, looking around and just trying to see this thing and this project, whatever. I made something. Then I called my mom and I said, hey, Mom, I did the 23andMe that you had recommended that I do. And I'm not seeing any German at all. And Grandma was 100% German. That is so weird. I'm not sure what to think of that. And I'm at work and she says, okay, this is what happened. And all of a sudden it was like a tunnel. And I'm standing there and she says, I was super young. I didn't know what to do. I was dating two guys. One of the guys was someone I didn't see really going anywhere. And then there was your dad, who seemed to have his act together at the time. And I chose one and I went with it. Okay. Wow. So if you can envision like an invisible string or a tether that tethered you to the person you thought you were, the family and connections that you thought you had, snapping suddenly, it was so intense. I fell back, and thank God my office chair was sitting right there to catch me, because I just literally found myself in my office chair just going, are you what then I immediately got infuriated, because I thought to myself, I am 45 years old. I thought I had it figured out and was able to break the cycle and create something new and wonderful. And I'm still getting the seepage of my old life into my good life, my new current life, the life I created and chose and worked so hard to establish.
Yeah.
And then I became really angry.
What did you say to your mother?
I dropped some F-bombs. First of all, I learned early, you don't contradict my mom. You don't question my mom. My mom did everything right. And every problem that ever happened was because of something that happened to her. And so I learned early not to do any of that. But I just came out and said, are you blah, blah, blah. I mean, I started using language I typically do not use. I go, do you realize I am 45 years old? I am a caregiver for a person that I'm not that close with and really feel a burden and stressed because, and I'm bringing out all this stuff because becoming a caregiver to my father, I have serious, I'm in therapy over it. It's not an easy thing for me. I'm not someone who's a willing person and participant in that process, but I want to be gracious and I want to do the right thing. But that's the first thing that came to mind is you trapped us together and I don't want to be there.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that he needed a kidney. Did he come to you for that kidney? Did you test or?
I won't. And I phrased it as, and this is before I didn't know, right? And so I phrased it as, if my children, and this is before we knew, I said, well, if you have a kidney disease, I could have it, develop it later, and my kids could develop it, and I need my kidneys to make sure that my children are taken care of if need be. But the real reason is because he lives a very dishonest life. He tells all of the kidney people that he is a non-smoker and he smokes like a chimney. He doesn't eat right. He doesn't follow the recommendations. He doesn't do his dialysis on schedule. He doesn't eat properly. And it's a constant struggle. And I've given up trying to say, you probably shouldn't have that. Or, smoking like a chimney and lying so you can get someone's perfectly good kidney so you can smoke it to death is probably a bad idea. But I didn't. Yeah. I don't say those things to him because I recognize where his life is right now and he feels so abandoned and so alone and so scared. And I really, really don't want to just argue. I don't want to fight with him. So I do what I can do to make his life as good and as comfortable as possible and fulfilled as possible. And I let him do what he wants to do. And that's where we are right now because I just don't want to fight with him about it. So he did, and I declined. And people are looking to me, I feel like, all the time. They're pretty good about it, though. I think they know. Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of was at first wondering, as you're telling your story, is that where this is going? You learn that way. And I'm sure listeners are probably wondering, too, oh, no, did she go to give him a kidney and then learned? But you found out through 23andMe, thank goodness, I guess, compared to that way. I just ignore it and I just help him through his process and help him with his dialysis and help him with his medications and do the things I can do, but allowing him to do as much as he can for himself because he's more than happy to have me do everything. And he pushes other caregiver options away because he's like, oh, my daughter will do it. Oh, my daughter. I was like, I have a full-time career and 2 kids. I'm trying to enjoy this stage of my life. My kids are now becoming more independent. They're going to go away to college. I should be able to go do things and not have to worry about what someone else is doing right now. But that's life, right? And he is my dad and I'm just doing my best. I'm really just doing my best. And I'm in therapy over it. I wish I could do 2 days a week. I should do twice a week for sure. But anyway, so I'm sort of just stuck. And so I felt so stuck. And I felt like, I don't feel like he was super enthusiastic about being a dad because he never came to any of my school things, anything, ever. And really wasn't involved in my life until I was married and had kids of my own and then became grandpa. And then we called on him about stuff or something would blow up in our garage or water would be flowing. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, Dad, because he was a contractor, a wonderful, talented contractor, and he would come and help us and do these things as an adult. And so I felt so grateful to have that relationship with him that I would take anything. I didn't get any of it as a child, none, but I got a lot of that as a young adult. I mean, there were times when I was sort of like in between housing, 18, 19 years old, and they declined me paying rent to live in their extra bedroom for 6 weeks while my housing situation stabilized. And I had some really feelings, some hard feelings when they took care of the stepkids to this day, everything in their lives. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to compare. I'm just going to keep going. But then when I grew up and it was like what he could give me was there's water damage, there was something going on, there's whatever. And he could do that. And that was something he was willing to do. And I was grateful to just include him in that. Yeah, we could probably pay a contractor to come do it ourselves. But my dad was interested in doing it. So
it was a path to connection.
It was. Yeah. And I was so grateful for it. Anyway, so I started cussing at my mother. I was so upset. And I was like mortified when I was able to calm down and stop shaking, that my door was open. And my students, who are adults, but probably heard my meltdown. And I had to pull myself together. I shut my door. I called my husband and I said, I'm in crisis mode. Something's not right with my DNA match. I'm really confused about what to do. My mother gave me a name of this other person. I went home. I don't even know how I got home. I immediately opened my laptop at home and started Googling the hell out of the names that my mother provided to me. And my kids then started like whispering upstairs and were like acting weird, and they're teens. And I'm like, oh, well, they're teens. They are always acting weird and whispering and doing weird things. So I didn't pay too much attention to it. And so I started Googling and discovered that this person my mother named is passed away.
Este episodio es presentado por Honda. Descubra la nueva Honda Passport Trail Sport Todoterreno. La Passport más todoterreno que Honda haya imaginado jamás. Esta Passport cuenta con mayor altura al suelo, barras de techo en todas sus versiones y neumáticas especialmente diseñados para cualquier terreno. Además, disfruta todos tus viajes con el control de clima de 3 zonas, techo panorámico y opciones como asientos delanteros con calefacción y ventilación. Conoce más en honda.com/passport.
Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the creative work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit servicenow.com.
Another layer of my fury was just compounding. I mean, the level of fury I felt right now was like I've never experienced in my life. And I don't have those strong feelings anymore, like when I grew up, and it just brought me right back to the chaos of my childhood. And that made me even more angry too. Like, it was just like so much. And so I'm sitting there Googling and I'm try not to cry. Like, I'm like having this complete breakdown. And my kids are upstairs. My husband comes home because he was like worried about me. He walks in the door and all of a sudden the kids meet him at the door. And I was like, my kids have not met dad at the door since they were 5. So something's totally up. My husband walks in and he goes, I thought you weren't going to tell them. And I said, tell them what? I don't even know what. I don't even know what's happening. We weren't going to say anything until we had answers. I don't have any answers. I don't know what I'm doing. And he's like, someone told them because they came in and asked me if so-and-so was their grandfather or not. I said, girls, what's happening? Tell me what's happening. I don't understand. My daughter showed me a TikTok that my younger sister posted outlining the entire scenario to the entire world. And I probably found out 30 minutes ago. And I don't even have any answers yet. And have you ever heard, I'm sure you know Brene Brown. Did you read or Atlas of the Heart? There's a word called Schadenfreude or some other word.
Schadenfreude?
That was it. And I remember that week, my book club, that was the chapter that we were going over. And I thought, how ironic is that? Because that is the emotion that I pinpointed onto that TikTok. That it was like that. I mean, she found pleasure. It was a moment of, happiness for her. I couldn't believe it because I've helped her through her life, and she's lived with us while expecting a child. And I have helped her in numerous ways and have been there for her through all of her poor decision-making, because she has a lot of the similar traits as my mom and really struggles sometimes in life because of her upbringing. And I couldn't believe it. My husband did only what he could do. And he was sending my sister texts, take it down, you're hurting her. I'm bawling. My daughters are like crying and we're all like embracing in the middle of my living room. And my youngest daughter goes, what is happening right now? I don't understand what is happening. It's like imploding our life. I don't understand. And it was so mind-boggling. We just all cried together for just hours.
And what did your sister say?
She was like, oh my gosh, I took it down. And she felt bad about it. But I don't believe that she did it maliciously. I think she's a lot younger than I am. And she grew up in the generation of posting everything that people don't need to know online. And that's her, and that's fine, but keep me out of it. She felt badly. She didn't think first. She wasn't trying to hurt me, but she hurt me deeply.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I told her I forgived her, and I realized where she was coming from. And I understand that she just made a bad choice, and we all make bad choices. And I just sort of forgave her, but I can't say that I feel the same way for her, and I'm mended exactly where I need to be. But I want to give her grace, and I want to allow her to be in our lives. I do love her. But right now I had to set that aside. I had to sort of set it aside.
And for anyone listening, we're recording this at the end of July, so we're only a few months out for Scarlett. So it's very fresh still.
She posted that TikTok 30 minutes after my discovery.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it was horrific. Mm-hmm. So she took it down and whatever, and I see her around, but I can't. I had to take that compartment, thank goodness for my therapist, and sort of set that aside. So I set that aside and I said, I did what I needed to do. And I said what I needed to say. Now I need to deal with the next situation, which is, who is my dad? Who is my biological father? So I ordered an ancestry test, and I just zombied through my life. I really should have taken time off. Because I don't think I was functioning on all cylinders for a while. I'm in the bathroom, I'm crying. I'm in my car, I'm crying. I don't think I did very good job at any parts of my life during that time.
You did the best you could.
I was just motoring through. It was just awful. So then I get my results. I match with a half sister, which I expected as a potential because the person who my mother named had a daughter who was 5 years younger than me. So I expected that, and I was hopeful for that. And I thought, how lucky am I? This is great. A different name, a different family, a third potential that was not in the cards at first. And so I actually felt like a sense of mourning for the other family that I had Googled and stalked for so long, and felt like this could be my family. And now they're not.
It's a double NPE. Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, okay, who is this person? So I Googled and Facebook, and this person's actually quite active on Facebook, thank goodness. And I sat with that for a little bit, and I could see the family, and the family, they all live in our area. They all live close by. They're in our community. They go to our kids' schools. They did as adults, and their kids do too. And my kids do. And the same school, the same community, the same everything. And so I was like, okay. And so I sat on this for a little bit. My husband and I talked a long time. He's like, just be real sure about what you want to do. Do you want to bring these people in your life? Because your family just has not the best track record. And once you bring them in, you can't potentially get them out. And we don't know who these people are. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And so I thought about it for a couple of days. And I thought, I need to know who this person is, because I have a bunch of autoimmune health history stuff that does not match anybody in my family. But I always attribute it to just extreme stress because, it was difficult growing up, and then bumbling my way through college and figuring out what to do. The very first person to do any of those things in my family. And I was extremely stressed. And that's where I started my anxiety issues, just because so I always attributed some of those things to maybe not now, but before.
Yeah, it's easy to attribute things to something else. Yes.
And so I sent a message to this half sister, and she was 5 years younger than me or so, and sent a message to her, a long message about who I am. And I don't want anything. I'm just interested in medical history. I would love to communicate with you and just learn about who you are and find out who your dad is, because it seems like our dad's the same dad. And I just was very open in a message. And I could see that she was a social media person. So it was a message on not Facebook Messenger. And I felt like she would be more open to that, because I understood that was her, she communicates that way.
Mm-hmm.
She got back to me and was lovely. She told me everything I wanted to know. She was excited about finding this out, always wanted a sister, was super grateful that I took that leap and wanted to share and tell me everything I wanted to know. So we messaged back and forth for 4 hours and just had a really nice sort of conversation. And then I figured out who, my bio dad probably was, but I wanted him to take a test. So she brought him an ancestry test. And even though, duh, I matched with half his family, but
even backing up just a little bit. So he's alive.
He's alive. So my husband was like, he's alive. This is actually the better outcome. Now you can have that moment. You can have that time. And so that's another reason why I decided to go ahead and message her, because I feel like I don't need any more family. I have enough of my own, which brings me some grief. I have my husband's side, which is absolutely wonderful. And I have a group of solid humans that are my friends. And I really don't need anything more in my life. I am just so fortunate to have what I have, and I don't need to reach out to find more family. but I was curious. Just curious. So he's alive. He's not in good health, which also prompted me to reach out sooner than later because he's not in good health. And so she took him the test, and we waited for absolutely forever. It was like forever. I've had this the longest test ever, and it came back as it was not inconclusive, but it couldn't analyze because it spilled in transit or something. So there was no analyzation. It wasn't an inconclusive. I told her, I said, I cannot wait. And by this time we're talking and I was like, I can't. I said, if I pay for something at LabCorp, will you just bring him there? She's like, yes. What time do you want me there? We had it done by 1:00 that day.
Wow.
And the next 2 days later, it was 99.999. And I was like, well, looking back, I'm like, duh. But I felt like I've told my mother this person's name, and she does not remember at all this person's name at all. And so my half sister asked her dad, and he did not remember my mother at all, no memory. And I'm like, okay, well, this is in the 70s. I'm not here to shame people. You do you, and you party it up. I'm cool with that. But they didn't remember each other. So I felt compelled to test him anyway, even though I did match with his family. And so I was like, because of that, I just feel like I really just need the paperwork. I just can't go through any more of this without the facts. And she was wonderful about it. Well, immediately after it came back, we met. She and I did. We met at a coffee shop and talked for 4 hours. Then went to lunch.
Wow.
This sounds strange, but I actually, when I see her or I see pictures of him, it's not like it's instant connection. It's not like I look exactly like them. I had an unfortunate eyebrow plucking incident in junior high, and they never came back, but I actually had a giant unibrow and dark, long lashes. And he had that. I feel like that's actually the only thing I got from him. And his health history, because I've got all these really wackadoo health history stuff that has no explanation, now has an explanation. And so, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't necessarily oh my God, we're best friends, but it was easy. It was easy and so curious. And she was so open. I could ask her anything. And I was so grateful and definitely wanted to spend more time with her and definitely wanted to hear more about him and her life and all of that. And I find out that all the people that I've matched with, they aren't close with. They're not close with any of their family. And so I'm not reaching out to any of the extended family members because I don't feel a need to, even though they're in my community, because they're not close with them. I don't need to be. I'm not searching for anything else. I found what I was looking for. Then I hosted at my house, her husband, her kids, and my kids, and went swimming and had a really good time and spent the evening together, just getting to know each other. And it was easy. Even my husband says it was just easy. They're just easy and chill, And I was like, I know, I'm so glad about that. And then a couple weeks later, I got to meet him at her house on Father's Day.
Wow.
And it was just a barbecue in her house, just her family, my family, and that was it. And we didn't have a lot of time to talk. I felt like someone in her family kept interrupting our conversation because I feel like they were trying to make sure it wasn't weird, even though I kept trying to seek out that one-on-one time with him. I couldn't seem to get it because someone would come join us and they were just trying to be helpful. And so it was just really low key and just really sweet. And he just asked me for a few little bits of information, and then we just had a really nice time together. And then we met again. I took them out to lunch, my half sister and my bio dad, and tried to drill him a little bit. I don't want to interview him, but I want to interview him. I just really want to interview him. I want to know what his favorite colors are. I want to know what his favorite music is. I want to know what he did with his life. I want to know what his likes and dislikes and his history is so much. I just really just want to interview him. But that's not the way it works. So we had a really nice lunch, and we're meeting today for lunch again after this.
Oh, that's amazing. So you've gotten to meet him 2 times at this point, and today's the third?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. He's nice. I mean, again, it wasn't like, oh my God, my long lost family. I had family. I have family. I have a dad. He's my bio dad, and he's got a first name, and he's very kind and very loving. And he's like, I would have taken care of you had I known. I would have taken care of you had I known this was the case. I just didn't know. I go, my mom didn't know either. This is not, I'm not pointing fingers. This is not someone's fault. No, my mother was dishonest, but she didn't even know. Then I would have known someone else as my bio dad and not you even. I mean, it still would have been wrong.
Have you learned, was he an involved father? Was he a, quote, good dad compared to what you had? Or
I think about that a lot. And he is definitely more emotionally invested. He took his kids in when they needed to be. They were not married, but they were together for a long time. They did eventually split up, and he never married at all again. But he did raise a stepson as his own. And he raised his daughter on and off. They went from mom to dad. And there was a lot of social issues, lots of poverty, lots of drugs, lots of alcohol, lots of issues there. But he was there every time she needed him. And he is a much more emotionally invested person. But, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, my life would have been blah, blah, blah had I been here. I think about that and I'm like, and this goes into my current situation with my actual mom, is I thought a lot about this. And I thought I could go back and say, what if, what would my life be like? What do I regret her decision? Did she do the best that she could in the situation given? And I think a lot back and I go, I don't know necessarily if I would change anything, because if I did, I don't know where I would be right now. I've made it to a place that I can be happy about, with a life full of personal responsibility, joy, and happiness in my life. And would I be there right now in any other situation, regardless of who my dad is? I don't know. I don't really want to know, because that's risky to me. So I do feel regret in losing so much time with him. Now he's not well, physically got issues. It's hard to spend time with him. He's not feeling good. He's not active. And so I'm sad about that, because I didn't get that from him, with someone who really wanted to know me and the father. My dad was just sort of caught up in his life and was sort of stuck with me. And he's a victim too. Maybe he didn't want to be a dad.
Does he know?
No. Okay. So this is me talking about personal responsibility and truth, right? And here I am. And I thought a lot about this. I have every intention of telling him. But in the past 2 years, he has lost his marriage, his home, his financial stability, his physical health, his well-being emotionally. And literally, when I tell you I'm the only person he has left, I am not kidding. And so do I really want to do that to him? He's in a dark place. He's in an emotionally distraught place. He is unwell, very unwell. I've been with him in the hospital for 10, 12 days at a time outside of my home, city, other parts of California for 10, 12 days at a time, unwell. And I couldn't bring myself to tell him. I do hope to be able to really soon, when he's up on his feet, because he's hopefully now going to be heading to a better place now. But I don't feel right about doing it. I feel like it'd be selfish of me to do that, because I want to get off my chest, because I tell the truth and I do the right thing and I have personal responsibility, and dang it, I want to live my truth, but I can't bring myself to do it yet. I don't know if that's right or not. I guess I feel like a hypocrite.
I mean, I think everyone has their reasons and their choices, and ultimately this wasn't your secret. This is just the reality that you've uncovered, and it sounds like you're being really sensitive to his situation before you reveal this.
I really, really feel conflicted. And then I spent some time with his sister because he was in a hospital nearby, and I gratefully got to stay there with her instead of a hotel this time. And she's lovely. I mean, she's a lot of fun. She never had kids. I'm her goddaughter. And she passed down all these family heirlooms, started sharing all these stories with me. And it's just, I enjoyed the time with her so very much. And I was feeling so much guilt because I'm not saying that she would disown me had she known. She'd probably be like, you're my family, blah, blah, blah. I get that, but I felt like such a fraud taking all of these valuable things from her home as she's looking to retire and trying to pass something down to somebody. I mean, she didn't have kids. And so she's trusting me with these things that don't belong to me. And so I told myself that if I told her, there's a risk it would get out, but also I would be trusting her to keep a secret. And I feel like that's not very nice because I don't like this secret either. So why would I make her do it too? So I would hold on to these things. And someday when I'm able to share, I will offer them back and I will let her make that decision with all the information. So they just remain in the boxes exactly as she packed them, and I have them in a safe place. And I'm thinking she'll probably tell me it's okay to keep them, but I want to give her that chance.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I felt and again, compiled the anger to my mother because here I am now in this emotional pickle and lying, which I don't live my life like that. And I'm being forced to do it again for the well-being of someone. And that she's doing this to me still.
Yeah.
And it's just awful.
How are things with your mother right now?
My mother, we haven't talked on the phone since that day in March of 2022. It's now July 31st, 2022, but we have shared some texts. She would send me messages and she would send me, funny memes like this isn't happening to me. Like, oh, look what I saw today. Look at this. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't with you right now. Like, I just didn't respond. And I just let her till finally, after a lot of thought and a realization that although I missed out on years and years of time with my half sister, which our relationship is much different than my other half brother and sister, because it's more of a friendship level than a mother level. I'm more of a mother to my half brother and sister on my mom's side. And I took good care of them for a long time. And I'm a supporter of them. But this other half sister is more of a friend. And I feel like I missed out on a lot of years with my bio dad. And I feel like that, but I thought about it and I thought, but I don't want to change who I am because that would change everything about who I am. It would change maybe what I've become. I don't even know what I would be. I could be the same. It could be exactly the same, but I don't want to think about that. I'm fine with where I'm at and I'm proud of what I've become and I'm happy with my little family and I don't want to change it. So I look back and I thought, what would she have done? She's a teenager in the 70s. Hey, in 1973, Roe v. Wade became legal. She kept me. She made a decision to keep me. And she made the best decision that she felt like she could make at the time. She cannot go back and change anything right now, no matter how much she may or may not want to. And I can't ask her to. That would be irrational. So I need to just respect the fact that she chose to keep me. She did the best she could, even though it really wasn't always the best choice. And she loves me. She just doesn't always get it. And I sent her a massive message, text, saying everything I wanted to say. And that at the end that I forgave her. And I understand the predicament she was in and how it was a very difficult place to be. And I can respect that. And I wouldn't want to change it. And there's nothing you can do about it now. So let's just move forward. And she was like, I love you. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. And that was the end. And now she just sends me memes again. Like, I just like nothing. But she did say thank you. And she said she was grateful and she loves me. And we haven't talked still. And it's back to our normal surface, sort of distant-ish relationship. And that was that compartment. So I'm a logical thinker with a list in my head. And I had all these little things I needed to tick off So it was like I had some things going on in my career that I had to focus on. So I had to sort of put stuff aside. And then I had, find out who bio dad is, get to know who this person is, figure out this. And now my last sort of quote frontier so that I can really move forward is to be truthful with my dad, my birth certificate father.
Yeah.
I wish I could do that today, but I just don't feel like it's the right time. And that's partly why, I'm struggling right now, but that's sort of where I'm at the moment.
Yeah. What do you hope becomes of your relationship with your bio dad and your newfound sister?
First of all, I want to just recognize how grateful I am that they have been so open and honest and caring and respectful of my need to step back, step forward, whatever position I'm in, because I did have to put them on the side when I was at the hospital with my dad and for some work stuff. I was like, you guys, I'm not ignoring you. I can't right now. And they were like, good. I just hope to have just a friendly relationship, take time away, celebrate our holidays together, have a friendship with my half sister. She's really just lovely. And spend lunches and time with my bio dad, but a lot of time was lost. And I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I feel like what I've got now is heading in the right direction, and I'm comfortable with that. It's just one of the most earth-shattering things that have ever happened to me, and I've been through a lot, that it messes with your identity, and I thought I knew who I was.
What advice would you offer to a parent who might be keeping a DNA surprise from their child?
I just don't think that there's ever a good reason. I feel like it's never a good time, for sure. Never a good reason. But I think that I would have preferred just the truth. I would have preferred just to know. I mean, it would just been one of the other million things that happened in my childhood. I would have handled it better. I would have had opportunities to choose to be in a relationship with this person or not. I would have had choices. And so it's just better to know, even if it's hard. There's never a good time. Just be honest.
Yeah. To follow up on that, because I think actually our situations are similar, which is that our moms didn't really know. There was uncertainty. Would you have wanted to know that uncertainty? I'm not sure who your father is versus I'm going to pick one.
Yes. Because when the one that was picked wasn't really involved really involved in my life. He was court ordered. He was, present. He let me be over there on every other weekend. And then, of course, was better growing up, which was wonderful. But I would have rather have known. It would be a quest at some point in my life to find out who that is. I would have wanted to know. Yes, I would have.
Thank you. And your advice here is just going to be so helpful because you are just a few months into it, but I can tell that you've really dived into processing and working through it. So what advice do you have for someone who just found out that they're an NPE?
The biggest I'm fortunate enough to have friends and family who support me and love me and have given me what I need, whatever it is at the moment. But what I discovered was the most helpful, and the reason I decided to come on and share my story, even though I'm not super enthusiastic about putting all of my stuff out there, is these podcasts. These podcasts have been a lifesaver. I just identify with people in the situation. And at first, when you first discover what an MPE is and you find yourself in this predicament, you feel all alone. Like this is the craziest story no one's ever heard of before. And then you discover, oh my gosh, there are so many people out there. I can resonate. So much of every story resonates with me somehow or another. Reading the books, going to therapy, all those things. I read all the books. I listened to all the podcasts, listened to all the stories, did all the therapy, and I did all of those things. And I feel like I have made a lot of progress because of it. And I highly recommend do it all of it, because it's saved me from, I don't know what kind of dark place I would be in right now.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, Scarlett, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, especially so new into your journey. I think it's really amazing to hear from someone who's really in that initial aftershock, going through it and doing the work. And you're not alone. And I wish you continued healing and peace and a really wonderful relationship with your newfound family.
Thank you. Thank you for doing these podcasts, Alexis. It was a lifesaver to me. So just thank you for everything that you're doing for all the MPs out there.
And now here's an update from Scarlett. After talking with my therapist and my family, I decided to finally tell my birth certificate father. The reason for this is numerous. Number 1, he has the right to know. 2, I am an honest person, and keeping any secrets seem wrong, especially when it includes info about others. 3, I am trying to teach my teen daughters that living a life of honesty and integrity is important, but I am asking them to lie to their grandfather. And 4, it isn't my dang secret. My birth certificate father was sad, of course, but he seemed to recover rather quickly once he realized that I am still here and have been for the 7 months since my discovery. Our relationship is exactly the same. He is my dad. We told the entire family on his side, and they were amazing. All expressed only love and support. Nothing is weird, and I have been fully accepted. The relief and joy cannot be described. I also admit that I am very fortunate. Now, the wacky part. We have a family reunion for my birth certificate father's side scheduled for December at my house. My birth certificate father extended an invite to my new half-sister and her family. She quickly accepted. They accept her and want to know her. Additionally, I threw a surprise party for my husband, and my new half-sis, her husband, attended and met our friends. I could not ask for more at this point. I hope my story gives others hope. Best, Scarlett. Thanks so much to Scarlett for sharing that update. If you have a DNA surprise story that you'd like to share, please email dnasurprises@gmail.com. Until next time.